Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 42 of the Hybrid Athlete Podcast. And it's a cold day here in Colorado. It's been about 2 to 3 weeks since I recorded last. So it's nice to check in with everybody again and see how, kind of give you an update and see how everything's going with you all and give you guys some updates and some feedback on what I've been up to and what I've been doing with my fitness and kind of with my, my status and everything. And, I share, information on, basically my workout regimen, my mentality, my approach. And another thing that I've been doing lately is kind of, the last episode I kind of hinted at, I might give a little bit more kind of philosophical input, not go, deep and heavy into like, all these conspiracy theories and all these, this political news and all this stuff that seems like the whole world is gravitating towards in these days where so many people just share their opinions and kind of really have polarizing, kind of almost damaging views of the other side or of their enemies or of people who they don't really know that well. So there's, you look at like this, this whole thing with the Charlie Kirk, assassination, for example. There's thousands of people online that are like posting videos talking about like they understand what happened. I think it's clear that there's been foul play, but I try to avoid that stuff. I try to like, even in my personal life, like when I have conversations with my, with my family, with my wife, with anyone, I just kind of keep it kind of okay. I sense that there's something wrong, but what can I do about it? And that's like the theme of my conversations and my podcast is like, yeah, a lot of times the world seems like it's going a million miles an hour, but what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? What micro steps can you take to basically put yourself and your family in the best spot to survive, but also thrive? So that's like kind of my update when it comes to, wrapping up 2025, for those of you that have followed my content, I've basically been kind of aggressively getting into bulking and like bodybuilding type workouts. So it's been a process. It's been kind of a fun process to, fully get away from endurance and kind of, dig into kind of understanding, okay, what type of cardio am I doing? Like, how do I minimize cardio and still like, how do I stay lean? How do I stay in good shape, but put on weight? How do I put on muscle mass? What type of supplementations? What type of, kind of schedule in terms of hydration and sleep do I do? So one thing that I'll give everyone kind of an insight on from my experience is I've been really leaning on hit cardio to keep me in good shape, but also keep, kind of volume my training and keep myself, getting bigger visually, physically, as well as putting on a few pounds every month or so. And my weight, to be honest, has been like creeping up above 200 for a while now, but I'm satisfied with how I've been doing it because I feel like I'm doing it the right way in terms of, I don't have cheat meals. I mean, I do eat some unhealthy things a couple times a week. Like, I'll have Pop Tarts sometimes just to get an extra carbs when I'm having like a protein shake. So, like, arguably, if I go on a legitimate cut, I will obviously take that out and remove it if I want to lose some of my, my midsection body fat, And when that time comes, I think I'll have like a different approach to like, what is clean eating or like what is my diet going to be looking like 7 days a week, and kind of transferably saying like, okay, this, these 5 days are this way, and then they transfer into next month or next week, and then these two days or so I might be on a caloric surplus. So that's one thing that I wanted to give you all an update on is, I've been successful at kind of doing intermittent fasting at least 3-4 days a week, meaning like I might have a meal on Friday evening at 6-7 p.m. and I don't eat again until 4 or 5 p.m. the next day. So it's like 20 to 22 hour fasting window to where it's like caffeinated beverages, pre-workout, some coffee, water. I'd still drink like half a gallon to almost a gallon of water, during that, in between that time, which is good, which is, keeps me hydrated and keeps my energy and focus up. But, I'm kind of leaning into more of like, okay, like how can I really kind of, go from happy with putting on weight to like, okay, let's put on more muscle mass in these specific areas. Let's put on, let's like train in a way to where you can you can quantify and you can exactly pinpoint where did you improve, month over month or week over week in terms of what was my output. Part of my training has been really cycle through like legs as hard as I can, like high intensity leg training, like, really do kind of, deadlifts and squats in the same day. I've either increased total weight or total reps on the squat, and I've focused on like form. So I've gotten a lot out of like, okay, maybe if I started with doing like a pyramid of like 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. That's like 7 sets, right? 6 or 7 sets of squats. And I've said, okay, let me add 5 pound plates, 10 pound plates, every month or so, and kind of, slowly increase my output, my performance in legs specifically. And I feel like I've brought up that body part in doing that. And sometimes, like, even a 5 pound increase, if you're loading up, 45 pound plates and you're like, let me just throw a 5 pound or 2.5 pound plate on there. It may not seem like much, but I'm learning to really zone in on like, what's the quality of each rep, as well as like the total volume, the total work that I'm putting in every week. So I've combined those philosophies. I've told myself like, okay, for example, if I do hit cardio, I've done 50 calorie burn on the assault bike with jump rope, right? But then I've kind of like extended that and I've said, okay, how quickly can I do those 50 calories? Does it take me 80 seconds? Does it take me 75 seconds? Can it take me as little as 70 seconds? And I'm really, pushing the pace and it's almost like a dead sprint to 50 calories. So I've like pushed the envelope on the quality of my hit training, the quality of each actual rep and exercise. And I feel like I've dug into more of like getting the best response, like feeling a pump more frequently, feeling that sensation of, okay, like this week, it's satisfying to like go into a week and say, okay, my recovery is right on point. Like, usually when I finish Saturdays, for example, I'm pretty exhausted. I'm like, man, my joints hurt. Like I've trained hard this week, and I've got to that point. But now it's almost like if I did the same, if I did close to the same schedule, like the same 6 or 7 workouts as I did the previous week, I kind of get an edge on that recovery. Like it's a little bit better. I got a little bit more energy. If I wanted to, I could do more type thing. And I've discovered like now I'm starting to push the envelope of like, okay, my size is going up, which is good. I'm right at like 204, 205, kind of fasted when I wake up, which is good. I still have some extra body fat that I don't really want, but it's kind of like a give and take. I'm kind of like, controlling my body fat percentage with kind of keeping on hit cardio. But another thing that I want to kind of share with you all is that I feel like steady state cardio does help you stay in good shape so you're not winded when you do weightlifting, when you do exercises. But even like an incline, a brisk walk, or like that type of cardio I'm leaning more into. And I've discovered like my size, some of the qualities of my pumps increase to where I used to, like, even earlier this year, like over the summer, I would do like a 15-minute run at like 8 miles an hour or something. I'd run like 2.5 miles before I'd lift weights. And I'm in good cardio shape still. So I'm like thinking, oh, that's not really going to, hurt the quality of my workout. But what I've discovered is like, you really want to, like, when you get more into the mindset of bodybuilding and like get scientific with it and say, I want to like, I want to do 12 reps, perfect reps, instead of 9 or 10 perfect reps on my last burnout drop set, something like that. That cardio, that pre-workout cardio, what you did affects that. So I feel like in many ways, like, and I'm still learning, right? Like I'm getting more into like, I want to be a legitimate, good bodybuilder type, you know, X person, like in fitness. I want to be that type of person. I want to be 220, lean, very lean if I wanted to, and like almost be ready to step on the bodybuilding stage at my best. And I'm not there yet, but I feel like I've made some good progress in terms of having that mindset, saying like, it doesn't matter if I'm hungry, like this is my schedule, tapping into like the previous week, like how do I get better? Okay, do I add like half a cup of rice to this meal, even though it doesn't seem like much? Like, do I cut out more sugar? Do I increase the quality of carbs? Do I reduce processed foods? All that I've been doing, but now it's more of like, let's combine these diet improvements, these micromanaged diet improvements, and let's merge those with like micromanaged quality of sets, and like kind of the mindset, the whole mind and muscle connection. That cliche is like, it's different for a lot of people, but I feel like in a use case example of me is back. So like, I feel like I've built a pretty good back now. Not great, but like decent for, having done endurance and having bad posture in my life when I was younger. But now I'm at the point to where like, this is a good example for you all to maybe like, kind of relate to me, is like, I've always just go through the motions, like my forearms are sore when I do back, or I do pull-ups and I'm just kind of like, my body angle isn't totally the right way, and I'm not really feeling the squeeze or like the contraction when I get to the top. My chin's above the bar. Instead of just being satisfied with getting my chin above the bar and like, maybe losing form on the last 3, 4, 5 pull-ups, I've really gotten into the mindset of like, okay, count the number of seconds on the eccentric and concentric, right? So like when you're down at the, when you're holding at the bottom of the bar and your body's just hanging there, like 1, 2, 3, and then go down 1, 2, 3, like 3 up, 3 down type thing. So like the timing control and the timing mechanisms I've mentally in my brain have used just kind of like an internal time clock of, okay, like, let's focus on quality as well as like the time it takes you to do one rep, one set, etc. I really like tap into that for back, and I feel like I'm getting like a nice, neuromuscular response to my back, which is great because like, I've kind of hit that plateau when I finished endurance of like, okay, immediately my back strength went up, but it was more of like, okay, I've done barbell rows for like 3 or 4 months, haven't really seen much progress. I'm doing like machine work still with back, which is good. I'm doing seated cable rows, which I'm getting a good response from, but it's been more of like, stretch on the down and then like squeeze and hold it and then do like good drop sets with back. So I would encourage everyone to use drop sets as like a really like an intensifier if you do it the right way. And drop sets done with really good form, I think, is the most effective because you're already reaching form failure at the end of the heaviest set. If you think about it, like if I'm doing barbell rows, for example, and I'm cranking out like 225 or something, I'm thinking, okay, like that last rep was kind of shitty. Then I take the 45s off, and then I go to maybe 185. That's typically what I do, and I'm in the mindset of like, okay, like it doesn't matter how many reps, it matters that I go till failure. I do AMAP, and it's like the best form I can do. The form that I started when I was warming up with 45-pound plate. Go back to that, burn out here, and then move on to the next exercise. And like for back, like doing that and then working different angles has really helped me because I feel like my mobility, like with my back, it's been more of like, um, do at least 3 to 4 different exercises every week. Sometimes I work out back twice a week, right? So another thing that I've talked about was like focusing on your weakest muscle group that you want to bring up. Prioritize that on a weekly basis. So, say for example, I do back on Monday. I'm going to turn around and do back just as hard on Friday, or maybe even Thursday afternoon, something like that. And then if I have back on Tuesday, I'm going to make sure that Saturday I get that second back workout in. So maybe chest or shoulders might only be one day a week. The most intense workout or the highest volume or the highest workload for that muscle group. But back always takes priority, whether it's the beginning of the week or Tuesday or even Wednesday is the first day of the workout for that week for back. I still focus on getting those 3 to 4 different exercises in at least twice. So for me that looks like barbell row, and then I do seated cable row. And then for vertical angle, it looks more of like just raw pull-ups, or it might be like that L bar, that triangle, that T triangle row. I might do that vertically on a cable or something. So there's different ways that I kind of challenge myself to like get the best out of the muscle group that I want to elevate and bring up, while still like getting good work, putting in good work with the other muscle groups. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I mean, I'm not sure how many channels or how many popular content creators talk about kind of prioritizing specific exercises twice. Usually they say like workout within 72 hours you can recover, or here's like this, here's basically the 3 or 4 exercises that I do for back. But like how many times do you do barbell rows if you're trying to bring up your back? It should be at least twice, and it should be like I said, drop sets for the most important exercises. Maybe not drop sets on every single exercise, but drop sets on the most efficient, the exercises that challenge you and work you the most. I would encourage everyone to do drop sets. And then shifting into more of the overall quality of my workouts. So it's like I said, I combine like diet improvements with like kind of like quality of each exercise and quality of reps at the end of a set. I would also say that the frequency in which you make yourself uncomfortable with a set and kind of challenge yourself to sometimes you have to force yourself to increase the weight, to be honest, because like I've kind of fallen into the routine this last year, and I've realized that in the fall, kind of getting into the fall of like, okay, it's great that like I'm hitting every day and I'm executing how I should, and I feel like the weight's getting a little bit easier. But sometimes like you have to, at the right exercise, the right movement, you should force yourself to do more weight. And I would lean on machine work for that. I would say, for example, I think chest is a great example. One thing that I've done was have kept my total weight, because I don't use a spotter when I do chest, like flat barbell. I've kept the weight nearly the same for the whole year. I've gone up like 10 or 20 pounds once. That's it. But like the volume has increased. The quality of reps has increased, in my opinion. Especially with like, not bouncing off my chest and like really like getting that scapular load, and then pulling up with the weight and like turning my hands at an angle when I think about squeezing the barbell. And then I've gone up more in like the machine. So like I've done machine work from like the hammer press. I love that machine. So like I've leaned into just like going till failure as much as like every set for the last 2 or 3 sets, and then hitting a drop set. So like I've really leaned into using machines to like go through failure and leverage those to like increase overall weight and overall output and workload, especially on like the priority muscle groups like legs, for example. I go to failure on hamstrings because I've done squats, I've done barbell deadlifts, and I control the weight on barbell deadlifts, controlled reps on squats. Never really go till failure on squats. I go very intense drop sets on squats. Like if I drop from 275 or 295 down to 225, once I get to 225, like every rep is difficult because I'm pre-exhausted definitely. But back to like the machine work is like, first off, you're not risking injury, but second off, your form is forced to be perfect when you get fatigued. So I think people should definitely like lean into using machine work when they're more advanced and they want to like, kind of like increase the weight consistently. But again, like making the decision when and if you increase the weight is kind of based on feel. Like I think an example for me, I kind of had like a nice kind of mental plateau that I reached today when I woke up, my joints were a little bit sore because I did a heavy like shoulder workout and hit session on Thursday, right? And then I usually do like a morning ruck, like a 45-minute ruck on Friday. So it's like a hybrid kind of light cardio day, no weights, no heavy day. And then this morning I dug back into like just doing a kind of heavy chest day. And, I got my light cardio in. I was hitting chest exercise, and I kind of, realized, man, my shoulders are still like fatigued and sore from the previous Thursday's workout, but I'm doing back on Monday. So I'm just going to like lean into this workout. It doesn't matter how much weight I do. Ideally, I can execute and use the same weight that I normally do. I might be a few reps short, but hopefully that's, the outcome is going to be what I want, meaning like I've exhausted my chest going into next week. I won't do chest till Wednesday next week. So my cycle's back, right? But what happened was like I kind of realized that on the flat hammer press, I was fatigued, more fatigued than usual when I hit my second exercise, but I was still hitting the weight and it felt easier. So it was kind of like that epiphany of, okay, nice. Like I've broken this plateau on machine work, meaning like the weight that I put on when I feel fresh, when I finish flat barbell or incline barbell I did this morning, and I go into that second exercise, I'm executing, like my form is really good. I'm not like, sometimes I like, my back's a little bit off and I have to like reset and focus on keeping it parallel. But like this morning, it was nice because I was like, I hit my reps and I was thinking, wow, I was feeling a little bit fatigued on the barbell, but my strength has literally gone up and I can quantify it by like 15, 20, 25 pounds on this exercise because I've been, pushing hard and going to failure in this hammer press for chest. So I think like those plateaus come in different exercises, but recognizing like which ones you should like seek to increase your overall strength in a safe way and not like, risk injury or anything. I think that a lot of the machines with plates where you can put load plates on a machine, I think that's the go-to just for like really pushing yourself in total weight and total volume for the workout. So hopefully, that makes sense to you guys. And that was kind of a big thing that happened to me this last month. But last thing I'll wrap up with is, maybe next episode I'll get into more of the diet stuff that I've been, working with and kind of messing around with. But I would say overall, I mean, keep stretching because I stretch, kind of a warm muscle is the best muscle to stretch. So I do like ballistic stretching too, to where like I mimic a movement. I hop around or jump around, or especially before legs, like I'll do that ballistic stretching and really get my hamstrings and my knees, my joints warmed up too. But I would just say preparation, and then preparation from the standpoint of kind of like dig into like how you can change each week in a small, like tweak each week in terms of routine, in terms of, exercise sequence. Of course, we've talked about that before, but, I would just encourage people to like get out, to find small ways to get out of your comfort zone, like maybe you've been like, doing, working out 5 days a week for the last 4 years or something. And you're just kind of like happy with, kind of hitting those weights and going up in weight. Maybe you're happy with the fact that your body looks different, that you're physically stronger. But I would say, use like use your consistency and use your discipline in terms of showing up and in terms of meeting the requirements that you have set in your own mind, and then go for like it's literally like 1 or 2 or 3 reps in an entire workout that could really start making a difference. And I know that seems like a small thing, but sometimes it's hard as human beings just to not be complacent and to be satisfied with kind of, the small increase just because an increase is an increase, right? But adding an increase that you really have to work harder for is really like it's a good healthy way to improve the rate in which your fitness improves. and improve the rate in which mentally you can like you focus on like things that you're supposed to focus on. Because I think there's a difference between just like showing up and working out and being happy with working out and being in good shape with like being sharp mentally, so that in your life you're sharper mentally. I feel like when you focus, like you hyper focus on maybe two or three parts of your fitness, and in this call, in this example, I'm using like, I'm using back exercise as like an intensifier for a drop set, and I'm using quality of two or three reps, where you kind of figure out, you pinpoint at the end of a workout, you can look back and say, okay, like in this particular set, I was mind to muscle. Like I focused on going down on a squat, and I forced myself to sit there and stick there for an extra 1 or 2 seconds. And then I came back up, kind of just like really controlling the weight, really feeling it more than I do sometimes on all these, reps and sets that I've been doing, on a weekly basis. So that's like my feedback too, is I've challenged myself with like, with arms too, like just with maybe the quality, a different grip on Z bar. So like I've done different Z bar curls with kind of heavier weight for biceps, and I feel like my biceps size have gone up more than they typically have the last 5 to 6 months. And again, it's not really an effort thing; it's just more of like strategically, hand placement and all that. Ways to get blood flow to different parts of the same muscle, because there's sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and then there's more tensile hypertrophy, which is like your joints are really feeling it. But different types of sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, I know that's a scientific term, but it's more of like which side of the muscle belly are you working when you do when you work the tricep head on a cable push down. There's one particular area that feels it the most, but when you do a dip or even a weighted dip, that is different. So scientifically, the angle that you're using, just think about that stuff. You don't need to be like, overanalyze, but you should get more scientific if you really want to get advanced, and that's my message going into 2026. And I think ideally people that watch my content, they're probably more advanced in general. Like, you track my physical, how I've changed physically. I post these shorts of, when I was running a marathon in 2023, 2024, now to where I look bigger, and hopefully my I'll stay lean, and my body will change even for the better in terms of like potentially having a six pack, or like being more, just more lean at the same weight. Ideally, that's the goal. But that's kind of what I'm focused on this year in 2026 is I don't really have a major change that I'm making. It's just more of like these intensifiers to get more into the mindset of an actual bodybuilder who says, okay, like, I'm not going to run before I need to lift. Like I'm going to do a light bike. I like bike to get my legs loose. I like, incline walks on the treadmill to kind of just get my heart rate up and kind of get my joints ready and all that stuff. So I'm leaning more into that type of warm up. But again, hit cardio, that's the last thing I'll say too, is hit cardio. Definitely people should leverage that. I mean, hit cardio doesn't take that long, and you're going to be uncomfortable for 15 minutes. I mean, you're going to be like, this is the hardest fucking part of my week doing this hit cardio, but it's worth it because you're going to maintain more muscle mass. And I'll tell you from experience, hit cardio is really good for like maintaining muscle mass, keeping high quality workouts, and even hit cardio. I always, and I've mentioned this before, I always do hit cardio in between heavy, like a back day and a leg day. And then in between or right after, I go hit cardio with shoulders, hit cardio with arms, hit cardio with incline chest, hit cardio with a small muscle group. And then I'm able to like get a really good workout. I'm able to like burn some body fat, and I'm really able to lean into like, okay, this isn't necessarily recovery, but it's kind of like an in-between workout that really keeps me sharp and on point. So that was a lot of information in this episode, but I hope everyone got something out of it. And then one other thing that I'm just sharing here is my diet plan. So, you can email me. My email is nathanielrv91@gmail.com. These are just kind of these cool, and I can share with anyone. You don't have to know me. You can just, see my content, reach out and, ask me, hey, what type of, diet plans do you have? Because I got a lot of good information. I mean, I can do, a body part, customize it by body part. We kind of define it from like a mesocycle of like, defined of, okay, I want to put on X amount of weight. I want to be functional. I want to have, I want to increase raw strength, that type of stuff. And then you can just go through and select, from a lot of different exercises for any body part, and just kind of build, a number of sets, minimum, maximum number of reps. You can even change that too, depending on what you think is best for you. But, a lot of good stuff here. And then it's coupled with a diet plan. So, I get pretty in detail in the diet plans. The level of detail I do is like, lean ground beef, or like, what type of vegetable option do you have? Because a lot of times, they're just saying red veg. I have a red veggie option here, for example, but I kind of I list them out and I kind of, emphasize and recommend which one's best for which meal and stuff. And, you can get, I can kind of attach like like a macro micro profile of all these, vitamins from these vegetables and stuff, and really give you kind of, answer a lot of questions you have and get you like the best diet that you have that's more customized that you can get compared to what you can get from like a mainstream app or a diet app or just kind of the the generic stuff. So pretty affordable too. I mean, pricing is, I have pretty low pricing based on what other certified nutritionists would recommend and would charge you for. So hit me up if you want to get one of these. These are real cool. So I still use mine, and I got a couple people that really like the ones I've given them. So they've been using them for over a year now. So